مرحبا وأهلا بكم في برنامج داخل واشنطن. معكم مضيفكم روبرت ساتلوف. الأمر واضح جدا للدرجة أنه كثيرا ما يغفل عنه. لعبت المرأة دورا أكبر في انتخاباتنا الرئاسية هذا العام من أي انتخابات في التاريخ. بطبيعة الحال يوجد دور هيلاري كلينتون أول سيدة يرشحها حزب كبير، ويوجد دور ميلانيا ترامب التي كانت زوجة للمرشح تختلف عن أي زوجة لمرشح رأيناها من قبل. ثم هناك دور المرشحتين لتكونا ابنات الأولى تشيلسي كلينتون وإيفانكا ترامب. ولكن فيما وراء هذه العائلات الرئاسية كانت المرأة في إنحاء البلاد محورية في هذه الانتخابات بطرق جديدة، بداية من القضايا الاجتماعية المهمة المتعلقة برعاية الأطفال والمساواة في الأجور، إلى الدور الذي لعبته الاتهامات بالتحرش الجنسي في حملتنا، وصولا إلى العدد المتزايد من السيدات المرشحات والفائزات في انتخابات الكونغرس. لم تشكل المرأة مجموعة مصالح خاصة هذا العام. لقد صارت المرأة محورية للدرجة أنه ربما لم يعد هناك حقا وجود للقضايا المرأة. لمناقشة الدور المتغير للمرأة في مضمار السياسة الأمريكية اليوم، يسرني أن أرحب بواحدة من أكثر المراقبات للسياسة الأمريكية والمجتمع الأمريكي تبصرا، وهي ميليندا هينبرجر. Welcome back to Dakhel, Washington. Well, our presidential election is now history, and for many people, what a relief. It has been the most taxing, the most coarse election in American history. And we're going to look back now at least one of the key angles in this campaign, the fact that we've had our first woman candidate and opposed to someone who made a major focus, and who was a major focus of this campaign, namely his own relationships with women. So Melinda, thank you very much for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
The most vitriolic campaign in our history, at least in modern history. How much of that vitriol had to do with the fact that we had such a clash between a female candidate and someone who was, as we say in English, an alpha male like Donald Trump?
I don't really think gender played as great a role in one way. I don't think the fact that Hillary Clinton was a woman became the defining aspect of the campaign as we might have expected it would. And I think that's because we had such a non-traditional candidate in Donald Trump, who spoke throughout the campaign in a way that we had never heard a major party candidate, certainly nominee, speak. His comments about Muslims, his comments about women, about Mexicans, about so many different groups really shifted the focus and made it such that things that would have been a scandal in any other presidential campaign were not given as much attention because every single day there was something that just kind of jaw-dropping that had to be paid attention to from Donald Trump.
So if we had had a more traditional Republican candidate, it would have been a bigger deal that Hillary Clinton was the first major party candidate as a woman?
I think there's a good chance that that's true. Another reason that I don't think her gender was as much the focus as, well, you just didn't see the excitement about the first woman that you saw about the first African American throughout Barack Obama's campaign. And I think one reason for that is that younger women, millennial women, were as excited about Bernie Sanders throughout the primary process as their male counterparts. So you just didn't have the split in terms of enthusiasm and the focus on, gee, this is the first major party nominee to be a woman.
Was this perplexing to the Clinton team? One might have thought that they would have expected a lot more enthusiasm and excitement about this.
I think it was quite perplexing, and she even made some comments, why am I, some of them joking, but they say behind every joke is some truth. Why am I not 50 points ahead? I mean, there really was the feeling that, it's never happened before. Why are we just sort of skipping over this and saying, oh, that's old news?
Should we take this as fundamentally good news about the state of American society?
That a woman could go so far?
That it's not assumed such a big deal that a woman could go so far.
I think we could take it either way, but I think you need to do it before it's not a big deal.
Right, fair enough. Now, not an insignificant number of women actually voted for Donald Trump.
Right.
Why?
And I know many of them. Because
maybe you did. I don't know. But that's not really important for this interview. But
because they were voting as Republicans, because they would say, I attended many Donald Trump rallies as a reporter, and I interviewed many Trump supporters, and the women, if you ask those women, what do you make of these comments about women? And they would say, you heard over and over, well, you can't take him literally. It's not everything he says does he mean seriously, which I had never heard about any other candidate either. But then there was the argument of the Supreme Court is so important to us that we're voting for the Republican. We care very much about keeping taxes low, about small government. We're voting for the GOP nominee. You heard that among people who were not that excited about Donald Trump, but there were women who were excited about Donald Trump, and because they, like his male supporters, felt so disappointed with the Republican establishment that the phrase that you heard from them was, blow it up. We just want the establishment blown to bits.
And do you think that given the voting gap between women and men, does the Republican Party have a women problem, and how would it go about solving this?
The Republican Party has for some time had a woman problem. So I would say, what have they got to do with women? I mean, after the last presidential election, the Republicans went back and did what they called an autopsy and said, we've got to do better with women, we've got to do better with minorities, we've especially got to do better with Hispanics. And then they nominated someone who did none of those things and in fact made the hill they had to climb that much steeper.
First daughters, there was a bit of a competition, although they're quite friendly, I'm told personally, but a bit of a competition between Chelsea Clinton and Ivanka Trump for first daughterhood. How did that play out, and what did people think about the role that daughters played in this campaign?
Well, they both did a great job of supporting their parents. I am not really surprised that I think they actually do seem to have a genuine friendship, because I think they have a lot in common, growing up as they did in a very unusual circumstance in the public eye. I mean, Chelsea Clinton in particular, growing up in the White House and being subjected to hearing a lot of things about her family that must have been very uncomfortable. Same with Ivanka in that way. I sort of marveled when both of these young women walked in after the, I guess it was for the second debate, walked in before, and these horrible things have just come out, this tape on which Donald Trump made these very inappropriate, lewd comments about grabbing women. And as a result of that whole conversation, a lot of unpleasant memories for Chelsea Clinton were really resurrected and brought back into the news about her father's relationship and treatment of women. So amid all of these, like, really, it has to be a gut punch to both of them, and they both come in smiling like nothing in the world was wrong. And, you know, that comes from a life in the public eye. You think, you know, the best acting school in the world couldn't have done better by these women. But they were both seen as very effective surrogates for their parents.
And the spouses sort of broke the mold as well.
Oh, yes.
We've never had a spouse quite like Bill Clinton for a presidential candidate, and never really had a spouse quite like Melania Trump for a presidential candidate.
No, never before had we had a spouse who had done nude photos, a nude photo spread that then was leaked to a newspaper.
You're referring to Melania, not Bill.
I am,
Although
I really am. Both, I would say that Melania Trump neither hurt nor helped her spouse, and I think that Bill Clinton both hurt and helped his spouse. I think he's still seen as a very powerful, very positive figure to many Democrats, but not without challenges, not without a downside and a history. And he still infuriates a large swath of the electorate who didn't like his presidency and especially how he behaved in office with women. Melania Trump, very interestingly, near the end of the campaign, gave a couple of interviews in which she said, because she had sort of been assumed to be, you know, a former fashion model who was kind of naive and didn't, you know, maybe didn't understand everything that's going on. And she said, you know, very convincingly, don't feel sorry for me. I know exactly. I'm taking care of myself, my son, and my husband. And not everyone thought it was inadvertent that she said it in that order.
Very interesting. Okay, when we come back, we're going to talk more with Melinda Henneberger about the key issues that touched women throughout this campaign in just a moment. My guest today is Melinda Henneberger. She is one of Washington's most insightful and accomplished journalists and editors. She is currently an opinion writer at USA Today, our most popular national newspaper. This is the most recent of a series of high-powered journalism positions. She served as senior political writer for Bloomberg Politics, the founder and editor-in-chief of AOL's Politics Daily, and the creator and editor of the Washington Post's opinion blog of women writers, titled She the People. Previously, Melinda spent a decade at the New York Times as a Metro reporter, Washington correspondent, and bureau chief in Rome. Truly a hardship post. Melinda is the author of the 2007 book, If They Only Listen to Us, What Women Voters Want Politicians to Hear. Well, let me begin with that. So what did women voters want politicians to hear in this election?
I think they wanted to hear more respect, full dialogue than was the case. I think women, I don't think it has really changed since I wrote the book nearly almost a decade ago, that the discourse in politics often turns women off even more than men, and a lot of women start to feel alienated from the whole process when everything they hear is screaming and yelling and scandal and negativity. And I was very interested to learn back then how many women didn't even reveal their party affiliation or feel comfortable talking about politics, even with very close friends often. So I think that is even more of an issue now, that women, while women have for a long time been the majority of the electorate, there are more women and more women turn out than men. It's about 53%. There is still a lot of untapped interest in politics. I think that women aren't brought into the process because I think the money in the political process turns campaigns very reliably negative. So the issues that women cared about in this campaign, the policy issues, I don't think there was much difference between men and women on what was on the particulars of policy.
And do women traditionally, or in this campaign itself, do they tend to focus on what are called women's issues? Abortion, equal pay, a child leave, these sorts of things, more than men? Or are they also focused on trade, foreign policy, national economy, jobs, these sorts of things?
The latter. The so-called women's issues, and I don't really think there are women's issues, were farther down, just as these issues were for men. I think it was abortion ranked 6th among women voters too, as in terms of importance. There is more interest for, say, child leave, family leave among women voters, but it's still not been a top tier issue. Even though, to give Donald Trump credit, he talked about it, or at least his daughter talked about it a couple of times, including at his nominating convention, talked about the importance of family leave.
So if one polls women and compares that to a broader national poll, are the same list of policy priorities?
Pretty much. I mean, I think it's true when you hear people say economic issues are women's issues.
Now, I want to talk about the political and social impact of the discussion in this campaign of sexual assault and sexual impropriety.
Right.
Totally new territory for a presidential election. What impact do you think this will leave now that the votes are counted?
I want to first say not totally new territory in a presidential election, or at least in a national conversation, because we did have this conversation when Bill Clinton was president.
And we also had the Clarence Thomas,
that's correct,
Anita Hill discussion.
That's correct.
Absolutely correct.
But, you know, this certainly, we haven't had it on this level in a long time. I still think it was very interesting and very disappointing to me, frankly, to see the partisanship of views on it. You know, something like 70% of people, not just Democrats, but of Americans, thought that yes, probably Donald Trump did have unwanted contact with a lot of the women who accused him, and yet they still most did not see it as a major issue in the campaign. It didn't change a lot of minds about him one way or the other. I also thought it, and I would have hoped that this would be an issue where you would say, if you have done something like that, that's disqualifying on a character level. And equally disappointing to me is that even though this isn't the 90s anymore, you would have thought we would have learned a lot more about sexual assault and related issues. You still heard Democrats saying, I don't want to hear about Bill Clinton. You still see Democrats referring to the women he was accused of being very inappropriate with, and in one case he was alleged to have raped a woman. You hear them refer to those women as his girlfriends, and in no sense is someone who is accusing someone credibly, I believe, of rape, although this will never be proven or disproven in a court of law. That person should never be referred to as a girlfriend or as a relationship. So it made me think we still have a lot of work to do, and that if you look at the numbers, people are still mostly voting party and not seeing this as a top tier issue.
Do we see any distinctions here in terms of age or race or gender or anything that might suggest that over time we're moving in the right or the wrong direction?
I do think that women, younger women, see it as less of a partisan issue. So I do think, and men too, younger men. So I do think that there is movement.
I mean, I know because I know from my own son who's involved in the campaign against sexual assault on college campuses.
Great.
I know there's so much more awareness of these issues. Do you think this election will will mark a turning point? Are we going to have, are these discussions now going to be part and parcel of our campaigns going forward? Or are people going to say enough?
I guess I already hoped we were at a bit of a turning point in the last few years, and I've written about these issues a lot, you know, with assault in the military, assault on campus, as you said. People are much more aware of the risks and of the problem, and schools are being forced to deal with these problems in a way they had not done before, and all that is to the good. Does this campaign mark a turning point? I'm not quite. Let me say that I hope that in our next presidential election, where we don't have a choice between someone who has been accused by multiple women of being a sexual predator and someone who is married to someone who has faced the same accusations.
Melinda Henneberger, thank you so much for joining us on Dakhel, Washington today.
Thank you so much for having me.
بهذا نصل إلى نهاية هذه الحلقة من برنامج داخل واشنطن. إذا كانت لديكم أي استفسارات أو تعليقات حول هذه الحلقة وخاصة حول دور المرأة في مضمار السياسة في بلدكم، أرجو أن تراسلوني مباشرة على عنوان البريد الإلكتروني التالي insidewashington@alhura.com. معكم روبرت ساتلوف. شكرا لكم وإلى اللقاء.